They invited the girl everyone called the scholarship charity case to the 10-year gala of Hargrove Associates, the firm that had fired her on her first day, and they planned to make her the punchline of the evening. What they did not know was that Cecilia Voss had just walked through the door as the new managing partner of the company that owned them. But before all of that, before the gala, the reveal, and the moment that would be retold at every industry dinner for the next 5 years, Cecilia needed a coffee, and the coffee needed to survive the trip from the counter to her table, which, based on her track record, was not guaranteed. The Maple and Birch Café on King Street West smelled like cinnamon and something almost like forgiveness. Cecilia Voss pushed through the door, the heavy wooden one that always fought back, and immediately clipped the frame with her shoulder bag. The bag swung wide, knocked a stack of loyalty cards off the counter, and sent them fanning across the floor like a very small disaster. She stopped, looked at the cards, looked at the woman behind the counter, who was watching with the careful expression of someone who had seen this before. "I'll get those," Cecilia said. "I know you will," the woman said pleasantly. Cecilia crouched, gathered the cards, stacked them back in approximately the wrong order, and straightened up. She pushed her hair out of her face. She had been awake since 4 in the morning reviewing acquisition documents, and she was quite certain she looked exactly like that. "Large oat latte," she said. "Please, name?" "Cecilia." The woman. Her name tag said Harriet, and she wore it slightly crooked, which Cecilia found oddly comforting, wrote it on the cup and slid it toward the machine. Cecilia found a stool at the far end of the bar, set her laptop bag down, and immediately knocked her elbow into the man sitting beside her. "Sorry," she said without looking. "It happens," he said. She did look then. The man was maybe 32, 33, dark jacket, sleeves pushed up, coffee already in hand. He was reading something on his phone with the focused quiet of a person who had learned not to need external validation from their surroundings. Which was, Cecilia thought, a surprisingly complete character assessment to form in 4 seconds, but she had always been fast at reading rooms. It was the only useful thing Hargrove Associates had ever taught her before they walked her to the door. The man glanced up, she looked away. Harriet called her name and set the cup down. Cecilia reached for it, misjudged the distance because she was still looking sideways out of habit, and caught the cup at an angle. The lid held, nothing spilled, she exhaled. "Close one," the man beside her said. "I have a system," Cecilia said. "It just doesn't always cooperate." He smiled at that. Not the polite kind, the real kind, the one that started in the eyes before the mouth caught up. Cecilia noticed it the way she noticed everything, catalogued it, filed it somewhere, moved on. Except she did not entirely move on because she was staring at the small smear of something on his collar. Dark red, berry jam, probably. A perfect oval, right at the collarbone. He had no idea it was there. She opened her mouth, closed it. "Tell him." "Don't tell him. If she tells him, he'll be embarrassed, and they are strangers, and this is already a strange morning. If she doesn't tell him, he'll go through his entire day with jam on his collar, and nobody will say anything because nobody ever says anything, and that is quietly one of the saddest facts about adult life." "You have something on your collar," she said. He looked down, found it immediately. His expression shifted through several things very quickly: surprise, mild horror, something that landed on wry amusement. "Since when, I wonder?" he said. "I noticed it about 45 seconds ago. I debated." "You debated?" "It seemed like important information, but also like it was none of my business." He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and blotted at the stain. It improved slightly. He seemed unbothered by all of it in a way that felt genuine rather than performed. "With raspberry jam. The toast won. The toast always wins," Cecilia said. "That's my experience." He extended his hand. "Declan." "Cecilia." She shook it. "Do you want a better napkin?" "I have one in my bag that isn't from a dispenser. I think the damage is already part of the day." She nodded. That was exactly the right answer. She did not say so, but she thought it. They talked for 20 minutes. About the neighborhood, about the construction on Adelaide that had been ongoing since approximately the founding of the city, about the café's cinnamon rolls, which Declan had apparently been eating every Friday for 2 years. He spoke the way certain people do, like he was accustomed to listening, and had simply gotten good at talking too. He did not mention what he did for work. She did not ask. It was a refreshing exemption from the usual downtown Toronto conversation. When he stood to leave, he looked at her once, briefly, the way a person looks at a door they are not sure whether to open. "I come here most mornings," he said. "I know," Cecilia said. "You have a regular's napkin tolerance." He laughed, short, surprised, and left. She sat with her latte for another 10 minutes and thought, in the back of her mind, that she had not laughed before 9 a.m. in a very long time. Across the city, in a corner office on the 34th floor of a glass building that had always reminded Cecilia of a very expensive aquarium, a man named Preston Hargrove was reviewing the guest list for the firm's 10-year anniversary gala. He ran his finger down the column of names. Stop. Why is Cecilia Voss on this list? His assistant, a patient woman named Sandra, who had been patient with Preston Hargrove for 6 years and was beginning to run low, looked up from her tablet. She was added at the request of Meridian Capital. They're sponsoring the event. Meridian Capital. Preston's voice went flat. They specifically requested her presence. I believe she has some connection to their new partnership structure. Preston set the list down. He turned to his window. The skyline sat there, indifferent. Cecilia Voss, he remembered her. Everyone at the firm did, though most of them would not admit to why. She had arrived 10 years ago, 24 years old, top of her cohort at Dalhousie. Scholarship student, first in her family to work in finance. Preston had liked her exactly as long as it took him to decide she was a liability. Too direct, too willing to challenge the senior partners, too obvious about the fact that she knew when someone was wrong. He had signed her termination paperwork on day one. He had called it a culture fit issue. He had never thought about her much after that. He thought about her now. Confirm her attendance, he told Sandra. Sandra made a note with the expression of someone confirming attendance at their own mild inconvenience, and arrange a slide presentation for the evening. Decade of excellence. You know the format? I do, Sandra said in a tone that did not confirm whether that was a good thing. Preston turned back to his window. He had a specific idea for the evening, a very specific idea that had been forming since Sandra said Cecilia Voss's name out loud. Something tasteful. Something that reminded the room who had built this firm and who had not lasted 48 hours inside it. He was, he thought, going to enjoy Thursday evening. Cecilia was at the café again the next morning, and the morning after that. She was not there because of Declan. She was there because it was close to the offices where she had been holding meetings all week, and the oat latte was genuinely the best in the neighborhood, and the wooden door that fought back had become something she took personally, and she was very good at winning things she took personally. The fact that Declan was there on Wednesday was, technically, a coincidence. He was at the same stool, jacket on the back of the chair, collar cleaned today, reading something in a paper magazine, which was either an affectation or a genuine preference, and she found herself hoping it was the latter. He looked up when she sat down. He already had a second coffee in front of him, just placed. You ordered for me, Cecilia said. I ordered an extra in case you came in. That's either very confident or very presumptuous. I was prepared for either outcome, he said. She took the coffee. It was perfect. They talked about the construction on Adelaide again, briefly, and then about Cecilia's complete and principled refusal to use the self-checkout at the grocery store, which she considered an ethical position, and Declan considered a very interesting stance, and then about what it meant to be from somewhere small. She had grown up outside of Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and had been told many times that she was too much for a place that size, which she had eventually decided to take as a compliment. Declan listened the way he always listened, completely, without looking at his phone. You never said what you do, she said finally. No, are you not going to? I'm deciding. She studied him. Most people lead with it, he said. What you do, where you work, what the title is. I find it closes things off, or opens them, Cecilia said. Does it? She thought about it honestly. No, you're right. It doesn't. People reorganize themselves around the information. Exactly. He turned his cup in a slow circle on the counter. I'll tell you eventually when it stops being the first thing. Cecilia could not remember the last time someone had made a statement that sensible about something everyone else treated as mandatory small talk. She made a note of it somewhere private and did not let it show on her face. But when she walked out into the autumn cold 20 minutes later, she smiled, and the wooden door swung open before she pushed it, and she said, out loud to no one in particular, finally. The woman walking past her on the sidewalk looked over. Cecilia straightened her collar. Talking to a door. Fair enough, the woman said, and kept walking. It was Sandra who called her. Cecilia was in a taxi on Thursday afternoon, on her way back from a signing meeting, when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. She answered on the last ring. Ms. Voss. This is Sandra Cho, Executive Assistant at Hargrove Associates. I'm calling regarding the 10-year anniversary gala this evening. Cecilia went still. You're confirmed as a guest of Meridian Capital, Sandra continued. I'm required to pass along arrival details. And, a pause, very deliberate. I'm also calling to tell you that Mr. Hargrove has arranged a segment in the evening's program, a retrospective. He's asked me to note that it includes material from the firm's early years. Cecilia looked out the window at King Street sliding by. What kind of material? Onboarding records. Early performance reviews. His remarks will be framed as a celebration of the firm's hiring standards. Sandra's voice was entirely professional, entirely neutral, and entirely clear about what she was actually telling her. A small silence. You're welcome, Ms. Voss. Then, for what it's worth, he signed your termination before your second morning. You were in the building for 11 hours. The call ended. Cecilia sat with her phone in her lap for 6 seconds. Then she opened her email, wrote 3 sentences to her own assistant, and pressed send. She was not angry. She had moved past angry a long time ago. Somewhere around the moment she had sat in the lobby of the firm at 24 years old, terminated paperwork in hand, and promised herself, very quietly, that she would build something they would not be able to look away from. It had taken 10 years. But the view from where she was standing now was excellent. The Gala was at a hotel on Front Street, the kind of venue that costs too much and shows it very politely. Cecilia arrived at 7:15, coat checked, hair up, wearing the dark green dress her friend Lena had told her was the color of someone who had already won the argument. She thought of that now and straightened her shoulders. The room was large and gold-lit, and full of the particular energy of people who wanted to be seen more than they wanted to be there. She recognized a few faces. An old colleague from her training year caught her eye and immediately looked away. Another gave her a small, startled nod. Word had clearly moved, in the way it does at events like this, through a system of quiet, sideways glances. Preston Hargrove was across the room. He was wearing a very expensive suit and the expression of a man who had written his own remarks 3 times to get the tone exactly right. He had not seen her yet. The man beside her said quietly, "You look like you're deciding something." Cecilia turned. Declan stood there. Not Declan from the café exactly. Same person, same eyes, same stillness, but tonight in a suit that was not at all like the dark jacket from the café stool, and with a name badge that read simply Declan Holt, Managing Partner, Meridian Capital. Cecilia stared at the badge for exactly 2 seconds. "That's what you do," she said. "That's what I do," he said. "You're the partner on your deal." Yes, she took a breath. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, slightly uncertain. Not defensive, just uncertain, the way a person looks when they have been waiting to see how something lands. "You knew who I was," she said. "I did, at the café." "Yes," she looked at him steadily. "And you didn't say so because I had read your file, and your file is very impressive." He said it plainly, not as flattery, as a statement of record. "And I didn't want you to know I'd read it until I'd actually met you. People perform when they know they're being assessed." Cecilia thought about this. And you are exactly the same person as in the file, possibly more. She did not know what to do with that for a moment, so she looked across the room at Preston Hargrove, who had finally noticed her and whose expression had undergone a series of very rapid adjustments. "He's going to do a presentation," she said. "I heard about that," Declan said. "It'll be embarrassing, for me probably, or meant to be." Declan was quiet for a moment. "Would you like me to say something to the organizers?" Cecilia shook her head slowly. "No, are you sure? Let him," she said. The presentation happened at 8:30. Preston took the podium with the energy of a man who had been waiting for this specific moment for a decade without quite admitting that to himself. He spoke about the firm's founding principles, about the importance of culture, about how 10 years of growth came from making hard decisions early. Then the screen behind him changed, a performance review. Cecilia Voss, Day 1 assessment. Insufficient alignment with team culture. Decision, immediate release. There was a murmur in the room. Preston smiled, turned to the room. "Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to be honest early. We let a lot of people go in those early years who weren't the right fit. That is what built this firm." Silence. Then Cecilia said from the back of the room, in a voice that carried exactly as far as she intended, "You also turned down the Meridian Capital Partnership in 2019. Very quiet. Very complete silence. "I saw the correspondence," she said, walking forward. "Not quickly. There was no reason to hurry. Mr. Hargrove passed on a partnership that is now worth, as of last quarter, just over $400 million. I know that because Meridian Capital is the firm that hired me after you let me go, and because I have spent the last 10 years doing the work you told me I wasn't suited for." She stopped 12 feet from the podium. "I'm not here tonight to embarrass anyone," she said, and she meant it, which made it land differently than if she hadn't. "I'm here as part of the Meridian team. We're in this room because we're deciding whether there's a future working relationship between our firms." She looked at Preston. "That's a decision I'm involved in." Preston stared at her. His hand was still on the podium. The slide was still behind him. Someone in the back coughed. Declan, from somewhere to her left, said nothing. He did not need to. He simply stood there, and that was more than enough. Preston Hargrove stepped back from the podium. He did not say anything. He did not have to. The room already knew everything it needed to know. Outside later. The cold came off Lake Ontario and moved through the hotel's covered entrance in the way that Canadian October does, not aggressively, just reminding you it was there. Cecilia was standing by the door when Declan found her. She had her coat back on and her arms loosely crossed, not defensively, just against the air. "That was," Declan said, stopping beside her. "Yes, you didn't even raise your voice." "I didn't need to." He looked at her. Something in his expression had shifted, not changed but settled, like something that had been waiting to find its level. "You knew exactly what you were going to say." "I knew what I was going to say when Sandra called me this afternoon." She paused. "I changed it 3 times. What did the first version sound like?" "Louder." He smiled. She looked at him sideways. She was still calibrating, in her honest way, because there was the man from the café and there was the managing partner from the file, and she was working out whether they were the same thing or 2 things she was holding at once. "You should have told me," she said. "At the café, I know. I don't like surprises in professional contexts. I know that too." He was not defensive about it. He accepted it the way someone does when they know they've made a genuine misstep and have decided not to make excuses for it.
"I'm sorry, Cecilia."
She looked at him a moment longer. Then she said, "You have something on your lapel." He looked down, alarmed. Nothing was there. She smiled. First real one of the evening. Testing. He let out a long breath. "That was unkind." "It was a little unkind," she agreed. He looked at her. She looked at him. The lake wind moved between them, and the city kept going behind the hotel glass, and she thought, privately, that this was the strangest 10 years she had ever heard of, hers or anyone else's, and also that she was hungry, and that the gala food had been decorative rather than substantial, and that she had things to say to this man that she had not worked out yet but intended to. "There's a diner on Bathurst," she said. "I know the one. Open late." "Yes." She tilted her head. "The raspberry jam. Was that actually from toast, or was it some kind of deliberate humanizing detail?" Declan looked somewhere between affronted and amused. "It was from toast. I eat the same breakfast every day. I have for years. Raspberry jam specifically. My mother made it. She still sends jars." Cecilia was quiet for a moment. "That's a very good answer," she said. "It's the true one." She nodded once, in the way she nodded when a thing had been settled to her satisfaction. Then she walked toward the street. He fell into step beside her. The hotel door swung out behind them, heavy and deliberate, and this time it did not catch on anything. Cecilia looked back at it. She had been fighting doors her whole life. Wooden ones, corporate ones, the kind on King Street that never opened right, the kind Preston Hargrove had signed shut on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday 10 years ago. This one had simply opened. She faced forward and kept walking, and for the first time in a very long time she did not feel the need to look back at all.